Hi, this is Sudhin Bhartia, and welcome to the special edition of TFiR Newsroom. We are covering Red Hat Summit remotely this time. And Paul, once again, welcome. We should be meeting in person, but we have to do it remotely. And also, congratulations on your role at Red Hat.
Thank you very much. I wish we were in person as well.
So let's talk about your new role and the Red Hat as part of IBM. How would you define Red Hat today as part of IBM, and what kind of company are you leading?
I would define it as a separate company, as sort of a wholly owned sub. In legal terms, I don't believe it's a wholly owned sub, but that's how we run it as separate. We set our own strategy, we set our own roadmaps. It's completely up to us. We stayed as a self-contained company. We still have certainly our own engineering, our own product lines. We have our own even back office. We have our own HR, legal, our own finance, our own all pieces to be a separate company. It's very much like VMware is to Dell or LinkedIn is to Microsoft. It's very much like that.
Right. And when Red Hat started, it was a Linux company. What kind of company? Yeah, that's what I want to understand.
Well, I say this all the time. We really were, once we made the switch to RHEL, when Red Hat started, it was a Linux company. Once we made the switch to RHEL, I really like to think about it as an enterprise software company with an open source development model. So I think that's a better way to really think about what Red Hat is, because it's all about enterprise software. It's all about we run our customers' business. It's all about, giving them, the performance and the SLAs and the functions and the features that they need to run their business on. So we have what makes us very unique is we have a completely open source software development model. That's our development model. Open source it's not a thing, it's an action.
And Red Hat does a lot of work for the community as well. There are a lot of communities that are funded by Red Hat. If you look at this crisis that we are going through, a lot of people have suddenly started talking about, digital transformation, moving to the cloud. And this is something we have been talking about for a while, that, move to the cloud, do all those things. And when we look at, most of these workloads, most of them run on Linux, some kind of Linux, whatever you talk about. So if you look at RHEL's role or Red Hat's role, post this crisis, what would be the infrastructure look like where people, because this is going to change how people think about, building their infrastructure?
One of the things that we started with, one of the interesting things is when we started with RHEL, it was really a commodity play. And it was really about, we can give you an almost as good platform as Unix, but for a fraction of the cost. And what happened over time was that because actually, Linux went by Unix a long time ago in terms of features, function, performance, all of that. But what really happened is because Linux was so available, so performant, and such that it became the innovation engine. And so all the technologies you're talking about now in the infrastructure, in the development side, in the tools side, it's all built in and around Linux because it's out there. So now, what we do as a company, now that we've added the portfolio around our platforms of RHEL, OpenShift, OpenStack. OpenShift is still at the heart of it. It's a Linux platform. Containers are Linux. And so we've built everything around that. So all the innovations now are around that. So we've turned it into really an innovation play. That's where all the innovation is. In terms of the cloud, when the clouds first came on the scene, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, the cloud providers might have told you that every application was going to move to their cloud tomorrow. We at the time knew that wasn't very practical. And so we started building to this hybrid architecture then. And by hybrid, we mean there's going to be applications and workloads that are going to run on physical machines, on virtual machines, maybe on top of VMware. They're going to be private clouds. There's going to be multiple public clouds. Being able to run the application, build the application, operate the application, secure the application, manage the application when running across all those footprints as opposed to having 5 different islands, that's what hybrid means. As customers started to bring cloud into their environment as part of their environment as opposed to their entire environment, that's when they started to recognize that hybrid was the only way as well. So that's where we are right now. Whether it's, and so I think as in terms of the crisis we're in right now, some people believe that it's going to drive workloads more quickly to the cloud. Other people believe that it's going to do the opposite and it's going to keep workloads on premise because just for a whole bunch of different reasons. We don't care. It doesn't matter for us. Whether it's 20% on premise, 20% in the cloud, 80% on premise, or 60-40 or 50-50, it really doesn't matter to us. It's still a hybrid world. So I can't predict if the COVID thing is going to push people to the cloud or more quickly or more slowly, but we don't care. It doesn't matter. For us, it's the same value proposition.
Right, but a few things have changed since Red Hat joined the IBM family, because now you also have access to the cloud as well. In addition to access to IBM's cloud.
IBM's cloud to us is a partner cloud.
That's what I'm heading to.
We don't have any different access to IBM's cloud than we did prior to the acquisition. So IBM.
So how do you maintain the balance? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm heading to. How do you maintain the balance that, because you also work with a lot of players who may be IBM's competitors, and IBM also works with a lot of players who are Red Hat's cloud. So how do you maintain the balance with the IBM cloud and all those services that comes from there?
That's why separate is so important to both Red Hat and IBM. So you saw me, if you saw my keynote yesterday, was it yesterday? If you saw my keynote yesterday, you saw me with Scott Guthrie from Microsoft, talking about integrating Arc with OpenShift. IBM didn't even know that was happening. We did not tell IBM that was happening because that was, while we were working on it, it was sort of confidential. And so think about it as well. We're big on Intel platforms. We're also big on IBM Z, IBM I, IBM P. We had to show Intel that we would not give their secrets to the IBM side. We know Intel's roadmaps were under NDA. We know Intel's roadmaps a long time before they're implemented. We have to, so we can support them in RHEL. So that's one, you hit the heart of the issue. That is the most important reason why we must remain separate, is so that those partner ecosystems remain. So that's I think that what we did with Microsoft this week is a testament to that, really.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons I wanted to ask these questions, to just get a clarity there. Also, can you talk about some of the, since we mentioned your keynote, what are some of the highlights of the event? I wish there were a lot of hallway track where you actually interact with people, but so far, what have been some of the major announcements from this conference that that you are really interested in?
We chose to not announce a lot of the releases that we normally would, just because it's such a different world right now. But some of the things that I think, the big thing that, I don't know if you saw the demo today with Burr Sutter, it was great. We're bringing virtualization to the Kubernetes container world. So I think that was one of the big things that we talked about and we showed, and we're really bringing this forward-looking Kubernetes architecture. We're bringing it forward, now bringing VMs into that, as opposed to some of our competitors that are trying to bring containers back to the proprietary, back to their world, right? And so we're moving it in that, taking it forward. So I think that was a big one. We're integrating it into OpenShift, so it's no additional cost into OpenShift. So I think we can really help our customers consolidate their spend in this space as well. We're focusing on telco 5G use cases on the OpenShift platform. If you saw my interview with Verizon on that, we're doing a lot of work with Verizon and the other telcos as well. So that's one thing. We talked about advanced cluster management on Kubernetes this week with ACM. Really important. Now, as customers are really bringing out hybrid implementations and having OpenShift with containers running in different places, being able to manage cross clusters with that becomes really, really, really important. And of course, OpenShift 4.4 that we talked about this week. So that we sort of scoped it down to rallying around those three big points this week, in terms of what we talked about, what we announced, and what we demoed, all of that. So we really kept we usually have a long list of product announcements. And so we really cut that down based on where we are right now.
Paul, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and talking to me today. And hopefully we'll see you again at the next conference or next Red Hat Summit. Thank you.
I would look forward to it. Nice talking to you.